Welcome, everyone, to the Dynasty Six Pack. This is episode 2. We'll be talking about the top 2 tiers in Dynasty. So that'll be at all positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. So sit tight and enjoy the episode. Welcome back, or welcome to the first time. This is only our second episode of the series, but yes, Dynasty Six Pack, part of the Fantasy Six Pack network of podcasts and live streams. So whether you're on YouTube or listening to the audio version, I guess Facebook video too, but be sure to subscribe wherever you are for those audio platforms. Rate and review as well. Really appreciate that as we this podcast that we're doing here. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to thumbs up. Comment. You can comment live as well. Join us here, and we'll definitely talk through the comments. There could be some random guy named Jamie, for instance, in the comments says, "My guys, 100%. What's up, fellas?" Which the fellas are myself, Kyle Senra, and my co-hosts Rahul, and some guy named Jamie Perog. How are you doing, Jamie?
Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm excited for episode number 2.
Yes, and there's 3 of us. Rahul Natarajan. How are you, Rahul?
Doing good, Kyle. Good to see you. Good to see you, Jamie. Yeah, excited to get back to it. I think, like I said, quite a few times last week, we're dipping our toes back into fantasy football, and I'm just even more ready now. At least twice as ready.
That's good. And the number 2 is going to come up a lot. It's episode 2. We're talking about the top 2 tiers in Dynasty. And yeah, every position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. And I guess I put the correct number 2 apparel on. Because it pays reference to where we've all met. All of us are from Going for Two Live. We've all done live podcasts there. So shout out to Jeff Lambert, who's really connected all 3 of us. And shout out to Joe Bond for letting us do the show here. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Rahul and Jamie, for joining me. I love this. But yes, I guess for anyone who missed last episode, I definitely recommend checking it out. We talked about the number 1 player at each position, which for some positions we were all in agreement on. Couple of positions there was a bit of debate, but all those players really are in our top tiers. So we're going to talk about those top tiers really quickly. Not too much discussion in the number 1 tiers. It's almost kind of across the board the same. So I guess I'll read through the top tiers. So for anyone who watched last week, the thumbnail image last week was Bijan Robinson. Figured he's a good guy to start with, right? It's Bijan, of course. I love Bijan. We all have Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs in our top tier at running back. Those are the only 2 in all 3 of our top tiers. So we were all unanimous that it was just those 2. Same thing at tight end. We just had 2 players, and all 3 of us had only those 2 players: Brock Bowers, Trey McBride. And really all 4 of those players, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, we discussed all of them, I think, enough last week as potential number 1 players at their positions. Obviously, they're the only 2 in the top tier, so not too many options there. Quarterback, it's a little more complex, but unanimous none the same, nonetheless. I should say less. I should just say the names. But Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, those are the 2 guys we debated last week. All 4 of us have them in the top 2 tiers, as well as Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. My quick comment, and I'll eventually shut up, is that those 4 quarterbacks each represent, I think, 2 archetypes of what the top end quarterbacks are, and it's the rushing quarterbacks, the rushing floor and the rushing ceiling. I think Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels represent the rushing floor. Those were the 2 leading rushers in terms of rushing yards. That's what's going to give you consistent points week in, week out. They get their ceiling really from throwing touchdowns, whereas Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, the floor isn't the rushing, the ceiling is the rushing, because those guys rush for touchdowns regularly enough. Hurts, I think, is on 3 straight seasons of double-digit rushing touchdowns. Josh Allen is, I think, 2 in a row as well, and regularly at least getting 7 in a season. So those, what do you want? The ceiling or the floor is really the decision to make when it's those top tier quarterbacks. So if either of you guys have comments on the quarterbacks, feel free.
Yeah, I actually think you laid that out perfectly, splitting up Lamar and Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. To make it even, I guess, blunter, it's those who run the tush push and those who don't. Even the Bills got in on the tush push or their version of the quarterback sneak towards the end of the season. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, Kyle.
Anything to say, Jamie?
You guys nailed it.
Okay. Wide receivers where things turn a little bit, but we actually do have a question. So let's get to that. The RPO football show, IDP and offense. So if this is Steve, hello, Steve. If it's someone other than Steve, hello.
I guarantee it's got to be Steve because it ain't me.
Okay. Are you the only two that have access to this account?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there we go. Hi, Steve. So Steve's asking us, what do you guys think about Rashee Rice possible suspension?
I only see 3 games maybe. He might get like a 6 game, but then they'll get it lowered maybe to 3 or 4. I don't see it being that big of a deal. It could be just some time off for him. Like in Dynasty, I still have him as a top 15 Dynasty wide receiver. I got him right around T. Higgins, even Marvin Harrison Jr. I have him above Ted McMillan. So if you're getting Ted McMillan at 102, I'd rather have Rashee Rice than that 102 pick.
Man, I was going to say, if not for a possible Xavier Worthy suspension, I'm kind of on board with Worthy being the wide receiver 1 there and not Rashee Rice. But I know he might have some issues too. So specifically on the Rice suspension, I mean, here's the thing. How many years ago did Josh Jacobs get a DUI and we're still waiting on this? Never happened. So at a certain point, the NFL has also just decided to sweep things under the rug. This was a huge story last year. This was the story of the offseason last year. The video certainly is, when there's video evidence that the NFL has shown that they're going to suspend. So I don't think it's going to be anything where he doesn't see a suspension. I don't know. Because I don't know what you guys remember, but last offseason, all the talk I was hearing that this was something that could be like a 6-game suspension, send a message. The NFL doesn't want to look bad. It's mostly that. Mm-hmm. But the more time that passes, I wonder if there's less need for that, at least the NFL's view of it. So maybe you're right, Jamie. Maybe 3-4 games is kind of where it's at.
And when he does play, he can put up top 10 numbers. He can put up top 5 numbers. So if it wasn't for a suspension, I think people would have him in their top 10 Dynasty wide receivers.
I mean, look how he started before the injury last year, right?
Yeah. I mean, he almost had 20 points a game. And then I didn't think he had a 30-point game. And then he got hurt. So,
Rahul, what do you think about the suspension?
I think I agree with both of you said, and towards the duration, it's not really comparable to what Alvin Kamara got suspended for 3 games, but that incident also had a pretty damning video, and Kamara just got 3 games. So I think both of you could be onto something with the duration there. We do have to remember the injury. I think not just ACL. I want to say ACL, LCL, at least something a little more complicated than just a standard injury tear. I haven't heard too much as to what that's going to mean for this season. We could expect slightly a down year. So Rashee Rice is definitely an interesting player, and maybe I don't know how much lower the value goes because we've seen what he can do. Can it get better? Maybe the efficiency gets better if the Chiefs offense bounces back a little bit. Travis Kelce was still doing a imitation of what we expect of Travis Kelce to start the year. And as the years go on, we're not going to have that kind of competition for what Rashee Rice does best. So dynasty-wise, I still completely in. It's a little bit questionable for redraft. And I think even if I look at some early best ball rankings, it might be a little bit early because there is a suspension and that recovery time from the ACL to factor in. But no worries at all on the long-term outlook for Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I think dynasty-wise, that's why, to Jamie's point, might be viewed as a wide receiver 1, but certainly in the high-end wide receiver 2 range.
Sorry, Kyle, but the 102 or Rashee Rice, I think, though, that's a little bit interesting and might be a little too rich for my blood. I just think there's a little more you could maybe stretch a 102 out value-wise right now and heading into this year's rookie draft than Rashee Rice, where there is this looming bad news hanging over it. It might be a little less liquid, but otherwise
Yeah, well, let's say 103 because like
yeah.
Hampton might go 102.
103 is pretty good.
I don't think you even need to spend that. I mean, could you miss a mid first, get it done just because of all this? So we still don't know about the suspension and the injury. By the way, I looked it up. Draft Sharks has an injury history section, and they're saying he just tore his LCL. I do remember when the injury first happened, we were all freaking out. Oh, multi-ligament, and then reports came out. Oh, the ACL is fine, which seems to be the case. But it was his LCL that got torn. So I do wonder if that's less lengthy of a recovery than a typical ACL. But again, I don't know. I'll have to check my rankings. Maybe I did drop Worthy below Rice after his recent news, but
I do have Worthy pretty close in the top 20, and I said Rice was like 15, so they are pretty close.
It's going to be a thing because they play such different roles.
Yeah.
Is that something where week to week we're attacking the defense through this way, and there's 1 week could be a huge Worthy week, the next could be really big on Rice. I think unlike what we saw at the start of 2024, where it was Rice, I think you said it, Rahul. Rice was kind of doing his best Travis Kelce impersonation, where he was being the short area, first down target guy that was just like Mahomes' go-to. And I think that role might still exist, but maybe I think part of it was Worthy was still kind of learning the route running and getting the chemistry with Mahomes. A lot of his early season stuff was short, and they were giving him rushing attempts. And it was almost like they were very redundant. But as we've seen the season go, we've seen Worthy get that deep field stretcher role. And I think that they complement each other really well. So both can exist in the offense. It might be matchups week to week.
RPO Football Show has a follow-up question. If we could just go real quick.
Yeah, I was about to get that.
All those guys back to back, except for Metcalf, which I have him way lower.
Post-trade especially. Ooh.
So for the audio listeners, let's just name all the names: Jordan Addison, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Devontae Smith, Terry McLaurin. Those are the 5 names that Steve is asking about. Do you have?
I have DJ Moore at 21, Smith at 22, Addison 23, and McLaurin 24, and then Metcalf somewhere down 29, 30.
So it's funny. None of these players are being talked about today in the top 2 tiers. Unless Rahul does. No,
not for me. That is funny though, JV. It's like so perfectly in that kind of tiered order in your rankings. Hard to say. Some of the younger guys are behind like alpha target earners. Warren, maybe in Devonta Smith's case, a little more of a boom bust offense. McLaurin, DJ Moore, even DK Metcalf, a little bit on the older end. I'd probably stick with Rashee Rice here. Maybe you could. Someone might send you Rashee Rice for Addison, maybe, but I take Rashee over all these players.
So there's 2 I actually have ahead of Rashee Rice, and no knee injury, that might not be the case, but I've got Jordan Addison, Devontae Smith ahead of Rice, and they're both pretty close. I've got Addison at wide receiver 15, Devontae Smith at 17, Rice at wide receiver 20, and I think my reasoning is, again, with Worthy there, I'm not as convinced Rice is just going to be this alpha locked-in target. Now, Smith and Addison, they seem to be the clear number 2s behind behind A.J. Brown, behind Justin Jefferson. But there are games where they still gain enough targets. I've always been higher than consensus on Jordan Addison. Early in that draft process, I was saying Addison ahead of Jackson Smith and Jigba. I should have trusted myself. It came to rookie draft time. I definitely took JSN over Addison and came to regret it. Although now it's flipped. Now JSN has shown it. But if you did it early, you draft Addison early, then you trade him for JSN plus the next season, and then you benefit that way too. So I should have just trusted my gut. I think what Addison has shown is that he's going to have almost what appears to be unsustainable touchdown numbers based on catches, but that seems like it's a skill set. So I'm trusting Addison to just continue to be who he is. I don't believe in Sam Darnold. So I think if Sam Darnold was able to do what he did last year, I think JJ McCarthy certainly can. So I tend to be on the optimistic side of JJ going forward, because Sam Darnold was complete awful. Like, I think the baseline expectation for a top 10 pick of JJ McCarthy is that he's better than what Darnold had been up until last year. In miracle, Darnold has this amazing season throwing to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Maybe those 2 guys are just that good. So I'm a believer in Addison, and I think it's a lot of the same situation for Devontae Smith. Like these are guys where if they're not with these other alpha receivers, they're probably the number one. Like if those guys are on the Chiefs, if Devontae Smith's on the Chiefs, I think he's the number one receiver on the Chiefs. And I would say the same for Addison. So I'm trusting my gut on those two and saying those two ahead of Rice. But yeah, the other three, I mean, I have McLaurin pretty close, but I think Addison and Smith is where I'm at for ahead of Rice.
All right,
And
so
wide receiver 20 for Rice is probably lower than consensus, I would assume.
awesome. So you want to transition into our tier 2s?
Well, there's one player that we have to address in the top tier. And I'm going to just ask the question here. Is CeeDee Lamb a top tier wide receiver? We don't all agree on this. This is actually the only player that's in our top tiers that isn't unanimous consensus. So, Rahul, do you think CeeDee Lamb is a top tier wide receiver?
I do think so. I think so. After last season, I want to say half PPR, maybe wide receiver 12 or just outside of being a wide receiver 1. Of course, we know what happened to Dak Prescott as well as the Cowboys. General malaise didn't contribute to the best of seasons for CeeDee Lamb after that. Big money contract. There was a bit of a holdout. All could have contributed, but the previous 2 seasons, just coming off wide receiver 1 in 2023, won a ton of leagues for people, especially remembering the I think week 17 against the Lions, and he had like a 90-yard touchdown in finals week for leagues that year. And then previous year was really his true ascension to being an elite wide receiver in fantasy football. I want to say wide receiver 6, but he really picked up in the second half of the 2022 season. I think just based on what he's shown, and it's a tier. The ones we agree with, no surprise here, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. We discussed them heavily in the last episode. And I think CeeDee Lamb warrants a place here by the fact he's shown multiple elite wide receiver finishes, including wide receiver 1, which fits the other 2. I think age-wise, he must at least be the same as Justin Jefferson, if not a little bit younger than Jefferson, if I'm remembering correctly. At least the same draft. I just think I can't group the first 2 by the criteria that I do and leave CeeDee Lamb out with that same criteria is my thinking.
The one thing that was simple for me that I'll agree with, and we'll let Jamie make his retort afterwards, because now it's obvious who doesn't agree. But I think I mentioned this last episode, and I have a list. So all the wide receiver 1s since 2014. This I'll go chronologically. So 2014 through 17, it was Antonio Brown every year. That's insane. We'll probably never see anything like that again. After that, 2018, DeAndre Hopkins, 2019, Michael Thomas, 2020, Devontae Adams, 2021, it's Cooper Kupp. And then we get to Justin Jefferson in 22, CeeDee Lamb in 23, Jamar Chase in 24. Yeah. And I think there's other young receivers that we could consider these guys have a chance to be the wide receiver 1 overall on any given season. And we're probably going to talk about them in our tier 2 here. But I think the Venn diagram of receivers that have done it and receivers we expect to do it in the future, there's only 3 that overlap to me, and it's Jefferson, Lamb, and Chase, and that's why I have them together in the first tier, because I don't think any of us are expecting Cooper Kupp, wherever he ends up, because he's a free agent right now, or Adams on the Rams, Michael Thomas is not playing, Hopkins on the Ravens. I don't think we expect these guys to come anywhere close to being the wide receiver number 1 on any given season. So that's to me is my main reasoning. Is we've seen those 3 do it, and I think in back-to-back 3 straight years, each one of them has done it. Is it going to be something like that continuously? It's just going to be those 3 kind of fighting for that wide receiver 1 year in, year out. I think I remember looking up target shares, and I calculate career average target shares, and Lamb is a little bit behind Jefferson and Chase. But if you also take just the past 3 seasons, because I think Lamb's first season when you had Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, I think he just barely hit 20% target share, whereas guys like Jefferson, I don't think has ever been below 26%. And Chase, I think maybe 23% might have been his lowest. So that first rookie season just brings Lamb down slightly, but that was so long ago. Totally new, different situation where he is the true alpha there now. And so I think all 3 of them have shown to do it. But Jamie, you're hesitant on CeeDee Lamb. Why do you not have him as a top tier receiver?
It's because Chase and Jefferson are the absolute 2 elites. Value wise, I have Lamb my number 3, but there's a big gap between them. So like if you offered me Lamb and like a late third, that will equal to a Jefferson or Chase. It's just because his target rate, it is in the top 5. His target shares in the top 10. He gets top 6 in the league for targets, but like his air yards aren't anything. I believe he's like top 24 in air yards. He doesn't get those deep targets, and he's like middle of the pack in red zone targets. I think he only got 16 red zone targets last year, and touchdowns. I mean, it's the Cowboys. How many touchdowns are they going to throw to CeeDee Lamb? He got what, 7 last year?
Two years ago, Dak led the league in passing touchdowns.
But 2 years ago, the first 5 weeks, if you look, he was crap. And then all of a sudden, like
True.
I told people buy CeeDee Lamb because he will be a top 3 guy. And then after that, week 4, I believe he blew up. It was either week 4 or week 5. I want to give credit to JJ Zacharyson for telling me to go buy CeeDee Lamb at that time. But I just don't trust the Cowboys because you got Dak Prescott. How do you rank Dak? Like top 15, top 16? He's
basically just outside the QB1 range for me.
Yeah. So I just don't trust it. And if they gave,
to be fair, that's higher than I have JJ McCarthy ranked.
True, but that's why I have Justin Jefferson in the elite tier because he's quarterback proof. He could do it with a guy that's quarterback 20 and become a top guy. But
fair enough. With Cooper Rush, we did see a drop, right? Like
the only thing that's holding me back. The only thing that's holding me back from CeeDee Lamb is the offense that he's in, and he's getting the targets and the target rate and the shares. It's just the touchdowns and like the red zone upside. I just don't see it. I'm not saying I hate CeeDee Lamb because he is my number 3. So he is pretty dang high on the list.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I can't put him in Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson tier.
And to speak of like top tier, I like talking auctions. So from an auction standpoint, that would just mean, okay, the max amount I'm willing to spend on Lamb will be a little bit different than Jefferson and Chase, which even if you have Chase ranked ahead of Jefferson, I find with auctions, you just kind of have those tiers. You're ranking to an amount. And maybe it's $1 more for Chase, but they'll essentially be the same amount, whereas then you'll have a bit of a price gap. Now in a snake draft, that's where I think it gets interesting because we're talking, say, Superflex, Chase and Jefferson are likely going to be the first 2 non-quarterbacks to go. If it's tight end premium, maybe it's Brock Bowers, but you're looking at mid-first round picks, whereas I guess that makes Lamb a late first or even early second. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
All right. So, and I guess to your point, Jamie, Dak Prescott isn't Joe Burrow, and that's the thing that has Chase has, right? Like he's going to be tied to Burrow for probably their whole careers.
Yeah.
And Lamb has Brian Schottenheimer as a head coach, which is a far cry from Kevin O'Connell. And so even if the elite quarterback isn't in Minnesota, it seems like the offense will still continue to be elite because Kevin O'Connell, reigning coach of the year, one of the best head coaches in the NFL, and certainly it looks like his offenses are constantly going to be operated well, and Jefferson will always get routes designed or maybe Addison's presence there prevents teams from fully blanketing Jefferson as well. So those two have those two things, whereas Dak and Schottenheimer might be enough that, okay, Lamb is clearly the third, which I think, is it fair to say, Rahul, that you have Lamb ranked third behind those two?
It is. I think that would be accurate. I don't know for redraft Lamb or Jefferson next year. I might even lean CeeDee Lamb just with Dak coming back and versus a JJ McCarthy, Justin Jefferson. In spite of what we saw, one thing that I do really like about CeeDee Lamb is his participation from the slot. I think if you look at the top fantasy wide receivers, besides Amon-Ra, who primarily plays in the slot, CeeDee Lamb is consistently topping the league in routes out of the slot. And those, there's been like this whole reframing of how us fantasy gamers view like slot wide receivers, slot work, because actually it ends up being some of the most conducive for fantasy scoring is routes out of the slot. So CeeDee Lamb consistently leads the league in that category, which Jamar Chase does. Jefferson a little less so. But for those reasons, I at least don't really have concerns with. I will draft CeeDee as a top 3 to 5 wide receiver next year in redraft with confidence at least.
I feel like Jefferson used to play more in the slot. Last year, I think we saw it a lot less, if I'm not mistaken. So that might have was that a Sam Darnold thing that okay, Darnold isn't going to throw much to the slot, so let's move Jefferson to the outside. Like, is that a Kevin O'Connell thing?
Yeah, they had a lot. They played
McCarthy?
A lot of 12%. Sorry to cut you off. A lot of 12 personnel, and then it was Addison. I don't think Addison had a suspension to start the year because remember he also had a little DUI trouble.
The legal proceedings are still going, so that's another one that could come.
But that was instead an injury that he picked up in the offseason. I think he missed the first 3 weeks, and then Hawk was worked back. So maybe we'll see more how the offense is meant to operate this year with all the pieces there and healthy. But the original point, at least, I think CeeDee Lamb is 3rd, but for me, he is in that top elite tier.
Yeah, so that's how you distinguish it. Like, still ranked 3rd, but still enough of belief of what he's done to put him in that top tier. So yeah, that's the number 1 tiers that we have in Dynasty. Let's get to tier number 2. We're going to start with running back, just like we did last episode. Keep it pretty simple here. It's actually just like tier 1. All of us have the same 2 running backs in tier 2. We're going for both those guys, going for 2. So we've got the incoming rookie, Ashton Genty, as well as Dolphins running back, Devon Achane. My big question here with Genty, is there a good enough landing spot and situation that raises him into the top tier? And then conversely, is there a bad enough landing spot that could drop him out of tier 2 entirely and leave Achane alone?
I don't know. I kind of think Genty's landing spot proof, where no matter where he goes, I mean, unless he goes to behind Bijan, like I don't see that happening. But he's going to be the best guy on the field, and the GM that drafts him, he's going to draft him in the top 12 to 15, maybe even top 10 in the NFL draft.
I'm seeing a lot of mock drafts, him going to the Raiders. I think it's 6.
Yeah.
Dude, if he goes to the Raiders, I don't think I'll put him with Bijan and Gibbs yet, but he is my number 3 right now, just pre-draft.
Same
I
here.
think he's going to stay there.
Rahul, how about you?
3, I don't know. I really do like Devon Achane. But in this tier, comfortably, yes. It's hard to see a landing spot that will get him into the top 2, just given kind of like the discussion we just had about the wide receivers. We've now seen Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson put up elite running back 1 seasons. And for that reason, I don't think I would ever, it's not like Lamb who could be a close 3 or a far 3. It's more likely a far 3. But as far as landing spot goes, I'm not really too concerned. Even if he lands, let's say the Raiders, the example we just brought up, a bottom half scoring offense, I still wouldn't be concerned because of the volume this guy has shown in college that he can handle. Maybe the miles on his legs is a cause for concern, but I think it's far too early in the career that hasn't even started yet to be concerned about that. And one thing that, I don't really see too many people talk about Genty because it wasn't as prominent in his final college season is he actually, people were talking about this is the potentially the best receiving running back coming out ahead of, his junior year, especially his sophomore year. It was like he had more receiving yards than like half the wide receivers that are coming out in this year's class. So that part of his game just makes me confident he's almost like he's a situation-proof, team-proof kind of player just because the volume he can handle, the type of touches he can handle, and with the capital that we expect him to get, there's such a strong correlation between high first-round draft, NFL draft capital and fantasy running back success. So I think he's comfortably a top 2 tier, whether it's RB3, whether it's RB4, he certainly warrants that kind of value.
Yeah, now next year, if we had the same conversation 365 days from now, I can see us putting Genty in the top tier with Bijan and Gibbs. It's just right now we can't do it yet.
And I think that was what I was going to ask. And I think I was going to also agree with that. Ask if you all agreed with me. The hesitation is just we haven't seen him do it in the NFL. So there's that still. We've seen Bijan and Gibbs succeed. We just saw Gibbs finish as the RB1 last year. So Genty still has that to prove.
And did we make a mistake? I mean, Bijan's our RB1 now, so it's hard to say we made a mistake. But Bijan was going 101 over, Stroud, over definitely over Gibbs. Anthony Richardson kind of fell off, but after their first season in the NFL, I would say Bijan would probably fall into almost 104 in that class before behind the two QBs and Jahmyr Gibbs. So maybe that's also part of the worry of putting him in that very top tier is are we just giving up some? Are we giving him value he hasn't earned yet by lack of performance?
Yeah, no, that's true. And just to touch on, I mean, we're going to talk about this a lot next month or in the coming weeks when we talk about rookies, but my quick takeaway is Genty's production profile is one of the best. Actually, is the best I've ever seen from a running back. Yeah. His scrimmage yards per season was almost 2,000, 1,877. Like it's pretty ridiculous, actually. Like the previous high before this season I saw was I think Deuce Vaughn, which that almost doesn't count because it's Deuce Vaughn. But like compared to Bijan, I think he was just barely over 1,500, maybe 1,600. So like it's something kind of unprecedented from that regard. He had a season with 43 catches. It's his best single season in this draft class. That's the third highest, at least for the guys that I evaluate. And again, one of them's a running back that's so bad at running, but he has a season with 83 receptions and okay, pure satellite back to me. And that's Jaquavius Marks, by the way. I think he's actually awful at running, but he could catch 83 passes a year. So it's like, okay, there's that. But you take him away and Genty is probably the premier true 3-down workhorse. So I think that's why we have him there. Any quick talk about Devon Achane or who you said you really?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to mention Achane. It's truly a tale of two different seasons. The rookie Achane was bursting off like 50-yard touchdowns from all over the place, and he turned into a PPR scammer in his second season. He got there in two completely different ways. The worry for Achane has always been, the size, that traditional profile that handle a volume, but it's just like a new breed of running back, and he's probably going to stand on his own as an outlier, at least at the very least while that coaching staff is still in there. And I think, I wouldn't claim to know too much about the O-line comings and goings. The Dolphins are probably still going to have below average O-line play in the next year. But the only way to go is up. Achane, for all that he scored, he still left a lot of points on the table through lack of efficiency, very poor on the goal line, and he just didn't have those house calls. And I think adding that back in, it's just the combination of what he can do specifically for fantasy football is too good to put any lower than 3 or really any lower than 4. I think he's comfortably in this second tier.
Well, I also think. Go ahead, Jamie.
I was going to say, you talk about a guy that can play 60 to 70% of snaps and get you 20 to 30 points on a weekly basis. That's why I have Achane in that tier.
And no, Raheem Mostert's released, so no more touchdown vulturing, at least from him.
Yeah.
We'll see. Jeff Wilson might still vulture some touchdowns. But all 4 of these guys on rookie contracts, I think that's the big thing, right? That's why we're not talking Saquon in this second tier. As great of a season as he just had, we still value the rookie contract running backs more. And so
you also have
it's not a coincidence that all of them are on rookie contracts, because to me that's part of the evaluation.
Yeah, you have to consider age also in dynasty rankings,
especially at that position where career lifespans are shorter. Other positions, maybe you stretch out the age a little more. I'm actually going to talk about that when we get to the next position.
So before I do see a question in chat, but can we hold that off because we're going to talk about our quarterback rankings, and this would be a perfect question to hit on.
Yeah, well, I did want to finish. There's one last thing Rahul put. Another rookie running back. Could there be another, again, rookie contract running back that enters into the second tier? So you seem to put in the show sheet as a question, Rahul.
Yeah.
So I guess I already asked it, but do you have an answer?
I did leave it with a enticing question mark at the end of another rookie running back, but it's like the point that you both just finished off, the 4 names that we do have in there, all in their rookie contracts, have many years ahead of them with the team that they're currently on. So with the way that people value the running back position especially, I wouldn't be surprised to see an Omari and Hampton taking that 10 to the Bears or 12 to the Cowboys, vault into RB5 territory, where suddenly you're thinking, I mean, who would be RB5 otherwise? I was really trying to see, can I put someone else in there? And it's like, would I take Hampton, a top 10 draft capital like RB2 here, or Saquon Barkley? Bucky Irving, maybe, but there may be a little more questions with
rookie
that.
contract, right? If he survives the draft, like if they don't spend early capital on another running back, then but Bucky might
exactly
into the second tier too. That was my one hesitation. I mean, we saw that the Dolphins do it last year, right? They drafted a third round running back with Achane, and then he barely did anything in Achane. Like Jalen Wright wasn't the reason Achane failed. It was because the offense just sucked.
Dude, I love that you have Hampton as a question mark in that tier, because he's 15 pounds heavier. He's like 2-3 inches taller. Hampton is that running back that we can see possibly overstep Genty, just like Gibbs and Bijan.
That's fair. And it's hilarious because I have higher tape grades on Genty and Bijan and Gibbs and Hampton just a little bit lower, but the production profile is undeniable. Hampton's scrimmage yards per season is just as crazy as Genty. It's wild.
I don't even want to put like Hampton. That I could have put Hampton question
who is
mark.
the RB2, right? Like,
who is the RB2? Sure. Yeah. It's one of those classes that there's so much running back talent that I'm almost deferring my decisions until we get a little more.
But are we sure that Hampton isn't the RB1 in this class? That's what I'm saying, because right now I have him, spoiler alert, but he's in my next tier in number 3, and he's my 7th overall right now. He doesn't even have a landing spot yet.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I'm seeing more and more steam that, like, at least from Dynasty perspective, as being the RB2 in rookie drafts, whether that's the case in the NFL draft. And I mean, he doesn't have to be the RB2 in the NFL draft to be the RB2 in Dynasty of this rookie class, right? Like, he might go to a better landing spot a little bit later than someone else, and we can compare, right? We don't have to follow the exact order, right? We don't have to take Kadarius Toney ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? I guess, so Taylor, your question, does kind of deal with quarterbacks.
You want to hit the quarterbacks next?
I did want to do tight ends because there's so few that we can quickly get through them.
All right,
so cool. I believe that's Taylor Michael from Fantasy Six Pack. So, and if it's not, well, thanks anyway. This different Taylor M for joining too. But we will get to your question as we, it'll be a nice lead into quarterbacks, as there is a player there that we will be discussing. But yes, let's talk tight ends. So this one's a little bit different, not a unanimous tier. So Jamie and Rahul both have Sam LaPorta. But Jamie, you also have a rookie tight end that we'll get to in a second. Well, I only have George Kittle in the second tier. And I'll go first because I already hinted at why. But tight end to me is a position where the age matters less because those guys seem to be able to produce longer, right? Like Travis Kelce was 34 and he was the tight end 6 this year. And I think he was someone that I was regularly ranking as a top 3 tight end, even these last couple of years. They're 33-year-old tight end. I'll rank him as tight end 1, 2, 3 in Dynasty. And I think Kittle has now replaced Kelce for me. Coming off it, I think Bowers officially finishes the tight end 1, but Kittle was right there with him on a points per game basis. And with everything that's happened to San Francisco, they've traded away Debo. Talk about knee injuries. Like, I don't know what we're getting out of Brandon Ayuk this year, because that, I think, was a complex, multi-ligament injury. Like, the idea that Brandon Ayuk's just going to come back and be perfectly fine, I think, is a little wild. I know I've definitely got him a lot lower than consensus in Dynasty rankings. To me, Kittle's easily the number 1 target on the 49ers, and the only guy that could maybe take that away, I think, is Juwan Jennings after what he proved last year. I don't think that's a fluke. I think that's the reason they traded away Debo. They feel like we can go with Jennings as our wide receiver 1 to start the year. But to me, that feels like Kittle's going to still lead the team in targets. Maybe McCaffrey comes back and does that. But Kittle's been so safe from a target share perspective and then this just amazing yards after the catch ability that's almost unparalleled at tight ends. I say the only guy that really comes close, I think, is Jonnu Smith. And I mean, he had a pretty big target season last year, but generally isn't getting the same types of targets as Kittle. So to me, while I like what you guys say with Sam LaPorta, what we've seen is he gets buoyed by touchdowns a little more, and Kittle to a certain extent too. But with LaPorta, it's okay, gets a lot of end zone targets for those touchdowns. Kittle could just score from anywhere. And it seems like he's not old enough yet where that's gone away. So if I'm building a dynasty team from scratch, I don't mind going older for Kittle at tight end, trying to win now. And I'd rather roster him than Kincaid or LaPorta or the guys that would be in my third tier where we're still waiting for them to break out. I do at certain positions still have a win now mentality. And I think at tight end, that's one of those. So to me, Kittle's the new Kelsey, and I'm willing to rank him at tight end 3 in Dynasty, evidenced by this. Obviously, neither of you have him in the top 2 tiers, so feel free to present your counter arguments.
Right now, I do have Kittle in redraft as my tight end 3, so I do understand your argument. You did compare him to Kelsey. Well, Kittle's going to be going into his 32-year-old. He's going to be 32. That was Kelsey's last great year, because when Kelsey was 33 and 34, he really didn't do much. So, yeah, right now I do have Kittle one more year, but after that, I'm done with Kittle. So I can't put him that high as my number 3 dynasty tight end. I have him around 7 or 8. Just because of that age, man. But like production this year, I do agree he is going to smash, and he's going to get the targets. He could be tight end 1 or 2 overall this year. But for dynasty, you got to figure in that age, man. And he's going to be 32 when the season starts.
Rahul,
Can't
do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, no, Rahul,
care to add to Jamie's argument?
This is honestly, this is one of the tougher ones in this tier 2 of tight ends. Even breaking Sam LaPorta there, it like didn't feel like a true. Our tier 1 Bowers, McBride. Putting LaPorta even in my tier 2 is like, this doesn't feel like equivalent to the other players we're ranking in their respective tier 2s. I completely get where you're coming from, Kyle. I think tight end especially is that position where we're really just looking for the difference makers. They're so few and far between it. George Kittle can be that, to where such a high ranking is warranted. I honestly am a little bit stumped with this one. I mean, Kittle, if you're a contender, if you don't have Kittle on your team, try and buy Kittle, because the price of acquisition is probably going to be very worth the production you're going to bring, at least in the short term.
Very few people are crazy like me and ranking him as tight end 3 in Dynasty, so you could probably get him cheaper than you could LaPorta.
It just makes it would make me uncomfortable to say I'd rather Kittle over Sam LaPorta. I still would not do that. If it's, can I pivot from Sam LaPorta to Kittle and a plus, I might like that. I might like that a lot more.
Yeah,
right? That's changing the rules of our.
And especially if the plus is like a draft pick, right? Like you get
like
something youth related added to Kittle to kind of mitigate the fact that you're getting an older player, but I'm getting a draft pick, so that'll eventually turn into a younger
player. Like Sam LaPorta for Kittle and like, I don't know, Josh Downs maybe, like a second, like that, exactly that kind of construction to mitigate that age that I'm giving up with Sam LaPorta. I would love,
Yeah, you just have to prepare yourself that if you do draft Kittle in like the top 3 to 5 dynasty rankings, he could fall off in a year and a half, and go down to like where Kelsey is now, tight end 20.
Kelsey, Andrews are like dust. And
but to be fair, I mean, Kelsey was still the tight end 6 or 7 this year. So while he's valued at tight end 20, he's still out producing that ranking, right? So, and I feel like Kittle is just it's already kind of started where his value started to dip. But I mean, last year was one of his healthy seasons finally. So maybe does the injury swing the other way? I think to Jamie's point, if you do take him in a startup this year, and then the season doesn't go the way you want, and you're on the losing side a lot, be aggressive, sell him mid-season to those contenders. So that's definitely, he's someone where you hold them if you're contending, but if you suddenly aren't contending, you want to be aggressive and get them off. So I will agree with that. And just to have everyone in on the joke, so we did a Google Doc with the table, each person's top tier, second tier, and in Rahul's second tier of tight end, before he even gets LaPorta, it says unbelievably large gap and Sam LaPorta. So to your point, right? Like the tight end 3 feels so far away from the tight end 2. Like get back to snake draft, Bowers, McBride probably in the first 2 rounds. Are you seeing you going maybe 2 full rounds after that before you see the tight end 3? Like you might see LaPorta in the 5th or maybe 4th round. Like that. And
it's crazy. Exactly. That's the comment that I put in. It's crazy because if you think just to a year ago where Sam LaPorta was often going as the tight end 1, McBride, a rookie Bowers. We also had perhaps a resurgent Kyle Pitts finally the year with Kirk Cousins there. We had Dalton Kincaid. Everyone thought he was really going to be the breakout candidate. It just how this can change in a year to year, even though it's, Dynasty is like the long-term game. It's just funny to see.
Well, and we talked about it last week, right? With Bowers finishing as the tight end 1 and why we all still rank him that way and expect it to be different than it was with LaPorta. LaPorta was the tight end 1 in 2023, and we saw him drop off. His target share went down. I think it was at like 21% as a rookie, but then he fell to like 17%. I do have that information somewhere, so I don't have to guess. But pretty sure I remember looking at that recently, and that's what it was. And actually 21.1, it dropped to exactly 17% last year. So, are we expecting LaPorta to kind of rebound to what he was as a rookie? And I guess B, like we don't expect Bowers to have that kind of dip. Right? I think that's why we mentioned it last episode. Like we think it's different than LaPorta, but looks like you guys both still have LaPorta as a top 3 option.
Yeah, and just to jump in very quickly and hand it off to you, Jamie. But he did have that season. Now it wasn't the true difference-making tight end 1 season we've seen others have in the past, but to do that in his rookie year, target share bounced a little bit, but Sam LaPorta was banged up at multiple points of the year, especially I think even at the end of the offseason going into the year, you had such a prolific rushing attack. You had Gibbs ripping off 40, 50-yard touchdowns. Jameson Williams broke out. I just think Sam LaPorta has established himself into someone who's not gonna go away, and it might be a little more boom bust than you'd really like as for an elite position player, but that's also why we say there's an unbelievably large gap from Bowers and McBride, who we can count on for that kind of volume.
Yeah, great points. Again, just predictable volume, right? Like not just based on touchdowns. Like that's what we're looking for really with Bowers. And Jamie, looks like you have LaPorta also as tight end 3. So
yeah, last year he put up I want to say 12 top 12 tight end.
It might have been tight end 12. Yeah.
Like his best comparable player for me is George Kittle. And he's 7 years younger than him. So I don't know exactly how.
Really high RAS score, to be fair, like really athletic.
Yeah. You know me, Mr. Athletic Profile. I love my athletic tight ends. LaPorta's one of them. Last year, 365 days ago, LaPorta was considered a number 1 tight end overall. People drafted him number 1 in redraft over everybody.
I definitely remember doing that in at least one redraft league, or actually only one. But yeah, and looking last year, I mean, it wasn't a poor season. He finished as tight end 8 overall in full PPR.
He had a slow start, I believe. He did have a slow start, but he picked up.
Points per game, he was 9. I think he looking like he missed 1 game due to injury. But yeah, no, for sure, slow start. Like his first PPR double-digit point game came in week 6. And that was only 12.2. And I think the touchdowns weren't coming, and that's why. So he kind of showed he had a super low floor. I believe there was one game where he had only 2 catches, and they were both touchdowns. So it's like, oh boy, glad there were those. It was very Mike Evans at the end with Tom Brady. It's like 2 catches, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's points.
Like
I think that is that 12.2 game. Actually, that would be 12.2 points.
And for tight ends, he's top 5 in yards per reception, yards per touch. I mean, red zone, he got 7 touchdowns, which is only like an
I think
11
so, which was
point
a bit of
rate.
this is less than the previous year, right? But still, he's
Still
showing
top
that scoring,
top five for tight ends.
Yeah, he's showing that touchdown scoring is part of his skill set. And
Mhm.
Taylor's asking another question that we will get to right now about Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews is that same example where he's consistently producing more touchdowns than should be expected based on his yards. And if you do it once, it's a fluke. But if you continuously do it year over year, that shows you're just a good touchdown scorer. That's part of your skill set. And maybe what we've seen with LaPorta 2 years in a row is even last year, less touchdowns, but he also had less catches, less targets. So it followed logically. Like he still 7 was still probably more than he should have scored, but he still scored him. So that's his skill set. But Jamie, you have one other guy in your second tier. So we're done with LaPorta. You can introduce us to a new tight end because now this is the second rookie we'll be talking about in tier 2.
Tyler Warren. This guy is a beast, man. I can't wait to see what team he goes to because he's got that deep threat. He can go all over the field in the short area, intermediate area. He's got the hands. There's just so much to love about Tyler Warren. And like he's just that dynamic weapon after the catch. As soon as he gets the ball in his hand, he's electric. And he's a former quarterback. So he's got that football IQ. And
that's what's helped Kelsey all these years.
Exactly. And he's a dangerous like runner, like down the seams even. You could use him in any aspect in the field. I don't know, man. He's a red zone nightmare. What else can I pull up?
Potential top 10 pick.
Contested catch rate. Like when you throw up a 50-50 ball, dude's gonna come down with it almost every single time. He's such a creative weapon that you can use in anywhere on the field, and that's what I love about Tyler Warren. He is my dynasty tight end 4 right now.
I've got him at 10. And
that's
part of it
too
is
low.
It probably is too low, Jamie, but the one thing I don't like about Tyler Warren is that he didn't run at the combine, so we don't have a relative athletic score on him.
Oh, come on now.
Well, but this is the position to me where it matters the most. Now, the problem is, like, none of the good
let's put him at a 4.65 to 4.68.
You know, Raz goes to 10, right? Like a 4.6 is horrible.
Well, who else ran? Look at the
40 to 40.
And to your point, of the top 5, only one of them actually ran at the combine. Yeah. So the first 5 tight ends expected to go, we only have one Raz score for them. So yeah, I still have Warren as the rookie tight end 1, but until we see it, like that's a position where I'm really hesitant on.
Like Gadsden. What's his name? I don't even know his first name. Gadsden.
I have no idea who that even is. I've got 13 tight ends ranked for rookies, and none of them are named Gaston.
Gaston's at slot receiver or slot tight end. Syracuse. That dude's the only one that's going to run faster. He can run like a 4.55.
Well, right now the guy from Oregon, Terrence Ferguson, he's got a 9.81 Raz. Like he's the guy that I kind of want to.
Okay, well,
he's gonna be Tucker Kraft, where I don't want to draft any tight ends. Like if I'm looking at it right now, I don't want to draft any tight ends before the 4th round of rookie drafts, and I'll take Ferguson in the 4th round. That's what I did with Kraft that year, which is why I don't have any Sam LaPorta. So that maybe wasn't the best decision, to be honest, but yeah, that's what I did.
I mean, Ferguson and Warren, they're within like a 0.05 in the 40.
Oh, okay. So do we have Tyler Warren's pro day numbers now?
No, I'm just going off what you ran at college. Like, it's going to show.
Oh, the GPS trackers, right? Okay, yeah, fair enough. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Rahul, any Tyler Warren comments?
I like what I've seen, especially like he's very prominent in the college football playoffs with the Penn State. I would think the one thing of how having a discussion with all 4 positions and the top 2 tiers is Tyler Warren at tight end 4, the second tier, that's going to be maybe like, after tier 4 of like the wide receivers or the running backs. I just don't think tight end 4 right now is really like it might not even be a top 50 startup pick, if borderline, I would say. That's really the only comment I want to make. But my strategy, I think it's similar to what you just said, Kyle. Rather not take a tight end before late round 3 or round 4, and maybe a couple of years down the road, it may pay off.
Now, draft capital, landing spot will certainly entice Warren to be draftable. I think he should be a first round rookie pick.
Yes,
but
not to say that
I don't have any rookie drafts before the NFL draft. Well, I do have one, but I've already traded away all my picks, so I don't have to make that decision.
No, the point I just wanted to make is, even if he's tight end 4, he might not be, top 50.
Do me a favor. If he does go to the Colts, yes, I am going to move him down just because I don't like the Colts landing spot. We're going to have to wait for a new quarterback, obviously, for him to hit.
Yeah. And thank you, Taylor, for this question. What happens? It seems like he's being projected to the Colts often. I mean, the Colts didn't go after a tight end in free agency, so maybe that's why everyone's thinking it. And I would imagine the reason to move him down is because of Anthony Richardson and the projected volume.
Yeah, I was hoping he would end up in Denver somehow, but Denver just got Ingram, and I don't see that happening. So, we will see. But talent-wise, I do see Tyler Warren up there in that second tier.
All right, so let's get to Taylor's other tight end question. Interested where y'all are on Andrews and Likely. Seems like maybe Andrews stays in Baltimore, but maybe not. And if he does stay, that tight end 1 role seems like a toss-up. So I think at this point, if they haven't released him, what are they waiting for, right? If they were going to release him, they would have done it so they could spend in free agency. I think it's already. I mean, they could still cut him theoretically, but at this point, why would they? If they were going to do it, I think they would have done it. So I'm operating that he's in Baltimore this year, but that could also signal the end is near soon for Andrews.
Well, Andrews, I just like Kittle. He's 2 years older, so I'm going to give Andrews that 2-year leeway until I start moving him down even more. Right now, I do have him around that tight end 10, tight end 9, with the Kittle Kincaid. Maybe.
Well, yeah. Oh wow, you're low on Kincaid. I figured you were so high on LaPorta, you'd be in on Kincaid too. But so Taylor's saying they've been trying to trade him. I suppose a trade would be more likely than a cut at this point. But if there are, I wonder if teams I suppose if he's going to get traded, it might be closer to the draft. Teams are waiting and see. They wanted to see who they signed in free agency. Maybe Denver would have been a team to trade for Mark Andrews, but they won't now because they have Evan Ingram. And I'm sure there's other examples.
You know what I would love to see? I would love to see Mark Andrews go to the Bucs to reunite with Baker Mayfield, his college quarterback.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
All right, Kate Otten value.
Kate Otten's kind of a beast, yeah.
I mean, Otten's just usable right now. I have him down at past 24, down by Kyle Pitts and Brenton Strange.
I have him at exactly 24.
Yeah, so that's where he's around for me.
Yeah.
But if Andrews goes back with Baker, dang, I would actually probably move him up probably that TJ Hawkinson, Njoku tier, we'll be talking about next week.
Yeah. Well, I think next week we're going to talk more about free agency than I think we're going to get through every single tier. I think it was more just the first 2 episodes, just to give us a baseline. Who are the elite players that we're going to be talking about in the first few rounds of drafts? The one thing that kind of disturbed me about Andrews, the target share just dropped. Since 2019, that's 5 years in a row where his target share was never lower than 22.2%, which was 2023 to be fair. So we already saw it kind of dropping. Went down to 15.9% last year. Still higher than Likely. Likely was at 14.4, but it does feel like they're almost going to be splitting. And so I've actually lowered Andrews down to tight end 13 in my rankings. And I'm one of the biggest Andrews truthers. I've been truthering Andrews forever. That's not
Kyle. Question: yes. Did you factor in the first 4 weeks where he had like 0 points.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, no, I mean, I just took the
after
target
that,
share. Yeah.
After that, he was a top 5 tight end the rest of the year.
But very
Right.
heavily on the back of touchdowns, which Andrews, like what we just talked about, LaPorta, that is part of Andrews' game, right? This is still one of the premier red zone weapons, but a classic Andrews stat line is 2 targets, 2 catches, 7 yards, 1 touchdown, right? That's like what we got from him all year. And I guess to go directly to Taylor's question, if Andrews stays, I hope to get a value on either of them. Even if Andrews at the top, top 8 tight end might even be a little too steep because I would be too worried about that regression bouncing back. The interesting case for both really would be if Andrews were to depart. Likely has shown a lot of things on tape that were really exciting and not really come through in fantasy points, but I'd be worried trusting too much in Andrews. There's something to say about him coming. He came off like that tightrope surgery. He had an injury to his hamstring. He might have come back and played 1 game in the playoffs the previous year. Yeah. But then looking at how Tony Pollard and Darnell Mooney, who are 2 players who had the exact same surgery that Andrews did, their first years back were poor. Pollard obviously is the RB1 and the Cowboys didn't really work out like where we had drafted him. Mooney had a pretty poor final year. The Bears both bounced back a year later. So maybe Andrews isn't washed. He isn't that old, but for that tight end 5 finish, I wouldn't really take that away because of how he actually got to the points that he scored.
Well, and the specific part of Taylor's question, if he does stay, does the tight end 1 role seem like a toss-up? And I really do think that likely is really closed the gap on Andrews. And I also think Zay Flowers being there as the main target alpha. Because before Zay Flowers, it was Andrews. Like Andrews was the guy leading the charge, leading the team in targets almost every year. I think there was maybe the season he was there with Marquise Brown where Hollywood got more targets. But for the most part, Andrews hasn't had to contend the last couple seasons with someone. Now we have Zay Flowers. And I mean, he injured himself late in the year, so we'll see how, is there a drop in Flowers? I don't know that it was a super serious injury. I don't think he returned for the playoffs. Maybe did he return in the Bills game? I can't remember, but
I don't think so. Yeah,
I think they kept saying he might, and it wasn't like he was ruled out for the whole playoffs. Like every week we thought he might come back. So my guessing with Flowers is that he's going to be fine once next season starts.
Yeah,
and I think to be that dominant target earner, I think that's really what's costing Andrews more than anything is Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers, and just to add to them, I know we've kind of beat this point to death, but they also finally had a running back that's getting 20, who's demanding 20 plus touches of the ball a week, and Derrick Henry, H-Cliff, I don't know where, but I'd probably project a similar touch season for Derrick Henry, unless the Ravens are somehow losing more than they did this year in losing positions. But that I also don't know how likely it is.
Well, likely. Well, we'll see likely and Andrews. Who's going to be the man there and who's going to be the Mandrews? All right, that was a horrible joke. So bad that Jamie left. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the internet issues. He's like, Kyle, that was too much. I can't stand it. All right, well, let's pass over to quarterbacks then. Now, an interesting thing. So what I noticed is you guys kind of got cute with the tiers and started putting like half tiers into the tiers. And then so these next 2 positions, quarterback, wide receiver, they do definitely, they apply there. But first thing, the unanimous players. So there were 2 quarterbacks that all of us had in the top 2 tiers officially. All 3 of us that had Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. Now you had Herbert in the separate tier. So like if you see Rahul's tier, it's okay, Burrow, Mahomes, and then like a line, and then it's 3 other guys. So I guess the start, Rahul, what is the separation there? Like tier 2.5? Like how does this go?
I was definitely bending the rules that we had in place, Kyle, by putting another tier, having 5, maybe there's nothing wrong with having 5 players in tier 2, right? Now, that might not be too much, but at the same time, I would find it difficult to send Joe Burrow straight up for Justin Herbert. And that's usually what people mean when they say tiers, is like the players within a tier are interchangeable, but I would not send Joe Burrow straight up for Justin Herbert, which warranted the a little line in between.
I don't think I would send Burrow straight up for Mahomes, right? But I think you throw me a third onto Mahomes, that might be enough to get it done, right? Just that little bit extra.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, okay, if you want me to go down a tier, I'm going to need another solid piece that's even more than a second, like another solid starter or something. So that I kind of viewed as that they don't all have to necessarily have the same exact value if they're in the same tier. Jamie, you done with my piss poor jokes?
Wait, say that again?
You done with my piss poor jokes? You have enough?
No, I sorry, my bad.
Well, I know that's why I made the piss poor joke, because I'm that bad. It won't ever end. I'm just going to keep going all the time. But so for the okay, Rahul, sorry to interrupt, but I guess that does make sense. So if I suppose that does make Herbert also unanimous. All three of us had him there. But I guess the first question I want to ask, it seems like all of us have Burrow as the QB5. Is that fair to say? Like, he's the guy that separates the top of that tier from everyone else?
Yeah, I honestly thought that Burrow could be in a tier of his own behind the 4 elites. But for the show specifically, like I think we all put Burrow on top of the next tier. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I wouldn't give up Burrow for Mahomes straight up. No, I want Burrow. And if you give me Mahomes, I want maybe an early third on top of that.
Basically what I just said, Jamie, when you were gone. So yeah,
sorry.
But that shows kind of we're in agreement, right? Like, players in the same tier don't have to mean they're their exact same value. That was kind of the whole summation of that. Mm-hmm. But okay, so I guess then technically all three of us have to do with Burrow, Mahomes, and Herbert. But I guess with Burrow, is it just the play volume? How many? Like, I think pretty sure he led the league in pass attempts last year. The Bengals super high rate of passing, over expected. And I think we expect that to continue, right?
I don't know. I think it's the sunglasses, man. Dude's Joe Cool.
Fair enough. Hey, that's part of the. I'll take Ray Garvin's term, ADV, artificial dynasty value. Mm-hmm. It's just this player people like, so they're just valued more because people like them, right?
Yeah,
Burrow
has that. Burrow doesn't have that rushing upside like the other guys above him do, but he was number 1 in pass attempts. He was number 1 in red zone attempts. Like, the dude's elite. He was number 1 in passing yards. He was air yards, number 1. Money throws, number 1. Pressured throws. He was number 1 in pressure throws. And even in danger plays, he was top 5. So he makes plays. He's got that IQ where if we didn't have the rushing upside of the guys above him, Joe Burrow could arguably be the number 1 right now in Dynasty.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if all the players ahead of him didn't exist, he'd be number 1. That's great.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying like if we didn't have these rushing quarterbacks, like
for sure,
straight passing. Because remember when Peyton Manning was the number 1 overall? He didn't have rushing upside. Joe Burrow's similar to that in my eyes.
If maybe only had Michael Vick at the time, and I mean, even Vick, like, I don't think Vick's as good of a passer as Josh Allen or Lamar or certainly Jaden Daniels. Maybe you might say Hurts. I don't know. Like, I did watch a little bit of Vick, mostly with the Eagles, but like, didn't strike me as a great passer. Like, so I think these guys are great rushers and great passers. And we just keep seeing the rushing guys more and more. I think the reason I have Mahomes and Herbert there are because, I mean, we've seen years where Herbert gets just crazy passing volume, and maybe with Harbaugh that doesn't exist as much. Although I do wonder if they keep adding and investing in wide receivers, if maybe that eventually does go up. I mean, their big free agent signing was Najee Harris, not a receiver, so maybe that is signals that they're not quite ready to release Herbert like it used to be. But we've seen that with Mahomes too. I mean, he could. I think 2 different seasons he's led the league in passing touchdowns. So all of them have that upside. I think. Just right now, I think we project Burrow to be that guy that has all those pass attempts.
But I mean, even with Burrow not having that rushing upside, he was quarterback 3 last year?
Might have been.
At least
maybe
at least points per game. I know he was number 3 points per game.
Well, so
how many
I'm seeing in full PPR he tied Baker. Like he and Baker had essentially the same points.
Yeah.
They were tied for 3 in points per game and in total points. That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
381.8 exactly for both of them. That's pretty nuts that it was that close. I mean, he wasn't that far off from Josh Allen. Like they're a tenth of a point per game behind Josh Allen. But so 22.6 points per game from Allen is also maybe a little lower than what we expect from Allen. It was, I think, a lesser floor ceiling. He still had the huge spike weeks, but I felt Allen's floor last year was lesser than
I think Allen, not to cut you off, I think Allen looks like he didn't play. He might have only had 1 drive in week 18, so I think it's counting that 0. Week 1 to week 17, then it's 24 points per game.
Good point
for Allen.
That's fair point. I should.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
But to jump in on this topic, I think whenever you have those quarterbacks who are going to score the majority of their points through the air, through passing touchdowns in this group, Burrow, Mahomes, Herbert, I have CJ Stroud on this list that we might touch on, but even if you include like a Jordan Love there, Dak Prescott, not going to be this high dynasty value, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, for all these quarterbacks that have the capability of 30, 35, perhaps 40 passing touchdown seasons, and it's almost just a game of chance. I think Burrow is the most likely, shown that he's the most likely to do that season in, season out, just with the weapons that he has, the historic lack of a run game that the Bengals have had while Joe Burrow has been there. Mixon was semi-successful and then became really the butt of many jokes, and then everyone's shocked how good Mixon has looked at the Texans, and Chase Brown did a lot of damage, but again, not really through the ground. There's a lot of checkdowns and call design pass plays for Chase Brown, and it really, kind of when you watch the Bengals, you feel like this has become Joe Burrow's offense. You hear, him talking about let's move some of my cap hit a couple of years later, signing bonus, keep the guys. It's become Joe Burrow's team. He is like this franchise, and for all those reasons, I'm kind of most confident in projecting his passing volume moving forward of that kind of pocket QB or air, passing QB kind of prototypes here.
Yeah, and I think Mahomes, Burrow, and Herbert, they're not zeros rushing. They're not like Mac Jones, but they're certainly not Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, which again is why they're in the second tier, but not in the first tier. But speaking of Herbert, we'll interrupt the tier talk a little bit here. Taylor's first question. Thank you, Taylor, for your patience. Asked this like 42 minutes ago. The timestamps are correct. 12 teams, Superflex, Start 12, PPR. Would you send Michael Penix and the 104 for Justin Herbert and Khalil Shakir? Really hope that's not Khalil Herbert.
No.
Khalil's with the Shakir, not the Herbert. So you wouldn't, Jamie?
It's
Not Khalil Herbert.
Well, it's not Khalil Herbert. It's Justin Herbert.
That's.
I'm liking that Justin Herbert side just because I do have Justin Herbert in my top 8 dynasty quarterbacks, and Shakir is just got that extension. I think it's 3 years extension. He's going to play that slot role. He's the most consistent pass catcher in the Bills offense. That 104, that might get you Cam Ward if he falls, which isn't even close. Maybe Cam Ward at his peak can be top 12, top 15. But I want the best player in this deal, and that's Herbert.
Oh, it's easily Herbert.
Easily Herbert.
Value.
But Penix right now.
Would you trade the 104 straight up for Shakir?
No.
And I think the same for Penix, right? So Herbert's the best, and while Shakir's good, he's also, I think, the lowest value, right? And that's why it's.
But you're also, the 104 is an unknown. Like, what are we actually getting? Like, could it be a Hampton? Yeah, if you throw Hampton at the 104, I would want a better quarterback than Penix.
The one thing that gives me pause, and I actually don't have any leagues that are 12 teams start 12. This is a longer lineup than I'm used to in most of my leagues. That's the only thing where I might say not even saying like don't do this deal, but let's maybe wait on the 104 because what if a team drafts the Giants take Travis Hunter at 3 and are like, or the Browns take him at 2 and are like, this guy's going to play 100% of his snaps at wide receiver. Suddenly the 103 skill player wise, maybe a little boosted, those another top 10 running back, a little more boosted. That's the only way in a vacuum I want to go for the Herbert deal, but just because of the format, just because maybe this super flex is a little bit devalued when you have to start so many skill players, I might just give it a second and see if we can get a little more information on that 104, the real value is going to be there.
Yeah. Now, if you threw in 304 in that deal, I would probably jump on it. But if you also change Penix to Jordan Love, so Jordan Love in the 104, I would probably take that side over the Herbert and Shakur.
For sure.
But if you add Penix, 104 and 304, I like this rookie draft, and I think you could get a great player at 304 where I might take the Penix side.
You see, I've got Penix. I've got him at QB 22 and Jordan Love at QB 11. Like that is a big enough jump.
I got Penix at 15. And Love's at 13. So
I guess that okay. That makes a little more sense of the comment. I'm thinking, if it's Love for sure, like that's a big enough boost. It's probably not happening. To your point, Rahul, about the start 12, I will say you probably don't want to just spend it on 2 quarterbacks. Like if you were to sell Herbert and Shakir for this, you don't want to take Cam Ward at 104. No. You want it to be an Amari Hampton or Travis Hunter or Tetra McMillan, whatever it is. You want an extra starter that's going to replace Shakir in the lineup, not a second quarterback. And then to Jamie's point, if you're doing this and the best quarterback you're getting is Penix, I don't love that. So the more I think about it, like when I first saw it, my initial instinct was give me the Justin Herbert side because he's the best asset. And I like Shakir enough that I'm willing to drop down from 104 to Shakir if it means upgrading from Penix to Herbert. And the more I think about it, Rahul, your great point about the start 12, the more I think I want that. I want the Herbert Shakir side.
Yeah. And as we keep, reiterating about this question, it's like Herbert, Penix, Love, the pocket QBs we had just touched on. Burrow had that 22.5 point season, and that was the best of those pure pocket or the passing QBs, right? 22.5. Herbert's going to fall somewhere in between 19 to 22.5 points per game, year in, year out, unless he has he falls in, from the 1 yard line, maybe a couple more times than normal. That's where he's going to live. That's probably where Penix is going to live too, is call it from 16.5 on his low floor to 20 to 21. It's just the same. He's going to get points a very similar way. So then when you come into it, the difference-making piece could be who you get at that 104. It could be, Hampton drafted like top 10 in the NFL draft. So that is a very interesting trade, Taylor, there.
Yeah.
And so just some more context here. Taylor would be getting the Herbert side.
Okay.
He tried telling the other guy I wanted to wait for the draft, and he said now or never. So this guy's saying now or never. And
honestly, I think, now or never, I'm taking a Herbert.
And I think to Taylor's point, the 104 is probably just going to increase in value.
Yeah.
At that early in the draft, it's probably its most valuable when it's on the clock.
Yeah.
But if you were even if the 104 gets to max value, I don't think you're getting Herbert straight up for the 104, right? So as a way to convert the 104 to the best possible asset, even if you're throwing in Penix, I think this is the way to get it done. So yeah, I say go make the trade.
Yeah, because like I said earlier, if I was gonna give up Herbert side, I would want the 304 alongside a Penix and.
I'm still not even sure it's enough. I think in theory, start 12, you want the extra asset, right? Like you'll default to the side you're getting 3 assets on as opposed to a.
Especially
I just don't know if the 304 is enough.
Yeah, in a start 12, I want the best asset in the trade, and that's Herbert.
I'm thinking the opposite, Jamie. Like I think you want to default to the best asset, the fewer starters there are, right?
You're right. You're right.
So shallow. Whereas you prefer depth, but
I don't know. You're still getting a Shakur, which is a top 25, top 30.
Yeah,
just this year.
I've got him inside the top 30. I think I actually have him in the top 24. Yeah, no, for sure. but yeah, I don't know that. My point is, I don't know that 304 is enough. And in theory, like a start 12, okay, it's a 3 on one side, 2 assets on the other side. Like in a start 12, you would normally default to the.
So you would want like the 209 in that deal.
Well, I was gonna say 204. Like if we're assuming it's the same
204.
team that has those picks, right? If it's 204. But to Taylor's point, he's the side with 104. So don't add anything, Taylor. If this is the offer that's there and you could just click accept and it gets done, or send this out now, go do it. I hope the other guy's not listening.
Yep, I'm taking it.
Although share the pod after if you want after that. But yeah, we still have after this trade, we still have a couple more quarterbacks to discuss. So we do deviate a little bit. All of us have at least 4 quarterbacks in this second tier. Rahul technically has 5, or it's 2 and 3, which makes 5. So let's go with the guy that both of you have, Drake May. I don't have him inside this second tier. He didn't show me enough to be put here. Like he's QB 19 for me right now, just behind Trevor Lawrence and Tua and Purdy. Those guys have shown me more consistently, so I'd trust them over Drake May. But sell me on it, guys. Why is Drake May top 2?
So Drake May right now, he doesn't have an offensive line, but when he was pressured, he was top 5 in pressure completion percentage. He had like almost a 65% completion percentage when he was pressured.
Get used to it, May.
But what I love about that is I don't want them to upgrade the offensive line because of his rushing upside. The more scrambles, the better, because that just means more fantasy points. If he can get 40, 50, even I think he even had like a 90-yard game on the ground one of these weeks. Give me that all day. That's 9 extra points for a quarterback. I believe he could be one of the elites. I love the guy, man. I think he's in that Josh Allen upside type player where he could be in that top 3 tier eventually, maybe a year or 2 from now. So I want to get him. I want to get him cheap because I've seen him be ranked as like quarterback 14, 15. So I'm
19.
buying him. I'm buying him all day at that, just because I think he could be that top 10. Yeah, I might be ranking him at his ceiling right now at QB8, QB7, wherever I have him. But it's just up from there because he could be in that top 5 at any given moment.
The one pushback I'll say, Jamie, is sure the scrambling because the pressure comes too quickly. That's one thing. But if he's going to get the Josh Allen upside, he needs rushing touchdowns, and he's probably not going to score a lot of rushing touchdowns if the O-line isn't good. So I still think if you're a Drake May manager dynasty, you probably want them taking O-line 4th overall and giving him that better protection. Don't make him have to throw under pressure all the time, and maybe that also helps with the rushing touchdown upside. So that's my one comment. But Rahul, you seem to agree with Jamie of having him in the top 2 tiers.
I agree with what both of you have said. I agree with Jamie's ranking, but I do agree that I'd still want the O-line to improve. I think he's just, and what he showed us. I mean, I think from when he took over as a full-time starter in week 6, and if you exclude the game he left early with concussion, he was QB 17 points per game, which is not that crazy, but he has the tools to be that, I think, elite scorer in the game with the rushing aside. Almost, I affectionately would call it the bozo gene. It's something that Josh Allen kind of has where, the play breaks down. He's just going to do whatever he can to get the ball across the line, And, this wasn't a rushing touchdown, but even that play towards the end of the season, like that, not a Hail Mary, just but like prayer ball, and Ramondre like catches in the end zone. That ability to create something out of nothing, to keep the play alive. I think he has the tools to be that elite scorer, and just coming from one of the worst offensive situations in the entire league in O-line play and weapons throwing to Kayshon Boutte and the ghost of Kendrick Bourne, and we got a few Pop Douglas games, and there's just so much that this team can go from where they started. And I think Jamie said we're already ranking him at his ceiling without necessarily having seen it, but I think this is the kind of guy with, if he gets that 2 rush touchdown performance, he's being ranked as a top 3 QBs. doing what Jaden Daniels' value kind of did as soon as he started going off in fantasy. It's just why I have him here. Yeah.
And even with his rushing yards last year, when he played, he is a top 7 to 10 rushing yards per game.
Okay, well, that's the Drake May argument, and then now there's two others. So I have Kyler Murray in this second tier, which talk about rushing. I mean, this dude, he still has the speed, and he definitely showed that. Now, for him to justify being in the second tier, he needs to get that connection with Marvin Harrison going. He needs to get the passing numbers up. Because one of the things maybe I'm guilty of looking back at his second season in the league where he had 11 rushing touchdowns, that might not happen anymore. But I still think he's one of the best rushing yards accumulators. Not quite Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels level, but I'd probably take him over any other quarterback in terms of who's going to be third in the league in rushing yards on any given season. I'd probably just pick Murray. And so that gives a solid floor. I think he's always really had that, a good safe floor quarterback, one of the safest weekly floors, to be honest. Even last year, 2 years ago, 2023 now, coming back from that ACL tear, he had an incredible, I don't think he had lower than 15 points for most of that season. Now, he didn't really have any ceiling performances either, so it kind of sucked, but he was giving you that consistent safe floor. I think he does that better than almost any of these quarterbacks. We talked about the reason Burrow and Herbert and Mahomes aren't in the top tier. It's the lack of rushing. Well, that's what Kyler has. If he can figure things out, the ceiling throwing, maybe year 2 with Marvin Harrison Jr. goes a lot better. He's a guy I really want to bank on. I think he's being so undervalued in Dynasty. Last year, I was saying to everyone, if you're in a super flex league, go buy Jalen Hurts. Everyone thinks the tush push is done. Jason Kelce retires, the tush push is useless, right? Like, oh, and what did Hurts do? Another 14, 15 rushing touchdowns. It clearly still worked, right? That was my whole point is you maybe have one other quarterback in Josh Allen this type of ceiling. So go trade for Jalen Hurts. I think this year my thing is going to be go trade for Kyler Murray because he's going to be so cheap. So I almost I think in my rankings initially I had him up as QB6 behind only Burrow in this tier, and I think right now I've Mahomes and Herbert's archetype. I think kind of pushes me towards them. Although with Herbert and Harbaugh, I don't know that the ceiling's quite there for Herbert. So, but I think Murray's.
Yeah, so I think you're frozen, but I do think Kyler Murray could be a top 10 quarterback at any given week. Especially what if they go out and grab an Ibuka with their first round pick?
Yep.
Then I will definitely move Kyler up. Like right now, I think Kyler's at QB 11 or 12 for me, which is like right below that Herbert at 8.
I mean, I've got him at 7, so if 11's not that far of a difference.
Last year, I had Kyler Murray. I believe I had him at QB 7. He just dropped because he didn't really show as much as I wanted him to.
And but Drake May showed up, right? And he showed a lot for you too.
Yeah, but going from like 7 to 10 or 10 to 12, I mean, that's kind of you can argue that that's a similar tier right there, 7 to 12.
Yeah, that's fair. Rahul, anything you want to say, or you want to get to your last quarterback in this tier?
Yeah, man, I was so in on Kyler Murray heading into last year. I think this is like the guy I called as my favorite target in Dynasty in redraft, and I must have carried the stat that in a fully healthy season, Kyler's never finished below QB6, and lo and behold, he finishes below QB6. And honestly, it's interesting. One of you brought up Ray Garvin's ADV, and one thing I think that applies heavily is to Kyler because he did not pass the eye test a lot of the season. And yeah, we're playing fantasy football where the rushing just come in. He had a random part of the stretch of the season where he was just breaking off 40-yard touchdowns, and he'd beat the first man and like already start celebrating as he has like 40 yards to run and go. But sometimes it just was like the ugliest 20-point fantasy game you'd ever see, and he's getting there on a rush touchdown. Now, again, you guys mentioned the case of upside, of which there are many, of which Marvin Harrison, that connection clicks. Trey McBride had 1 receiving touchdown. He had 1 rushing touchdown, 1 recovery fumble touchdown to go with a receiving touchdown. That could change. James Conner might not be the beast that he was this past season, adding to more Murray's points on the goal line, but I think you are pretty justified to put him in this tier. I'd probably rank him at QB if it's clearly not a QB. I guess QB9, QB10 for me. It's very close.
Yeah.
The last season just left a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, and I don't know how that's going to translate to your dynasty league, the market you're going to work with Kyler Murray. I don't know if that might leave a bitter taste in their mouth.
So last year he was QB10, right?
Yeah.
But
he never finished as QB10. He was literally QB1 or like QB 24 every week.
It was the opposite of the previous year where the floor was high, but the ceiling was low. Last year, the ceiling was massive and low floor. Kind of almost Josh Allen like.
So if he finished at QB10, like you can't blame someone for putting him at QB8 just because he still is young. But you can't also fall for someone putting him at QB12. So he's got to be in that range, 8 to 12.
Yeah, so I'm looking at points per game. He was 12 actually, and in total points he was 10. So yeah, depends on which way you're looking, but yeah, that QB1 range still, even at his lowest, right? So that's kind of like season-long floor. I think is really high.
You also have to remember there was a Call of Duty that came out last year, so that might have lowered him a little bit because he was too focused on playing his video games.
And to Rahul's point, the ADV, Kyler does seem like a guy that gets hated on a lot, right? Like, and that might be causing his value is dropping lower than it should based on the points, just based on people don't like him. Mm-hmm. So there's that. A quarterback people love. They raised him to QB1, 101 overall in Superflex Dynasty last year. Maybe that was a little too much ADV as well. CJ Stroud, but Rahul, you're expecting to bounce back this year.
I heard that little scoff there, Jamie, but I do have CJ Stroud in my second tier, and it kind of follows the reasoning I did when we talked about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is CJ Stroud working out perfectly to his ceiling. That's the kind of quarterback he has the capacity to be. Have those 35 pass touchdown seasons year in, year out. I think we saw the worst of CJ Stroud's his own play, but the scheme, Bobby Sloak was so heavily praised the year before that he became almost like the brunt of all the OC jokes. It's just funny to turn around and it's like, yeah, Nixon run on first and second down for 2 combined yards, and then they're third and long, and Stroud takes a sack, and they have to punt it away. That was the story of their season. We thought this was going to be one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL, and Nico Collins missed a bunch of games. Tank Dell wasn't the same after last year's season-ending injury. Also got shot in the offseason. Stephon Diggs missed half the season. There's a lot of churn. It's mainly O-line play. I don't know whether the O-line play improves drastically. They've, of course, sent away Laramie Tunsil along with Kenyon Green, I believe, is the guard they sent away. So I don't know if necessarily it improves, but I think CJ Stroud just had everything going against him. And while 101 was not justified, I think he still warrants a place in where I've ranked in QB7, QB8. In my second tier, maybe second round startup pick. Superflex, I think he certainly warrants that. This is still a guy who's only going to be heading into his third year in the league.
Yeah, I Christian Kirk.
Which
another ADD guy that everyone hates.
But I think that's just to finish that, I think that's a perfect fit for Tank Dell. We don't expect him to play at all next year. Stephon Diggs is a free agent, so I think Kirk is going to be a perfect foil for what Nico Collins is really, really good at doing. So I do like that signing quite a lot.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Stroud. I love Stroud. When he came into the rookie year, I was getting him at the 105, 106 in Superflex drafts because people were taking Richardson and Bryce Young over him. I got so many shares of Stroud, and then 365 days ago, I saw that he was QB1 on Keep Terry Cut. I was like, I'm selling him at that cost. So I sold almost all my shares of him. Right now, I do have him in my top 10 still. I have him above Caleb. I have him right around that Bo Nix. So, my tier ended with Justin Herbert, right? But you're cutting hairs because Herbert and Nix could be back-to-back. Herbert and Stroud could be back-to-back. So with these tiers, yeah, I do have Stroud right behind the guys we talked about today, but he's still in my top 10. He was taken 102 in the drafts, and we've seen NFL when they take the number one guy like Bryce Young, he fails, and then the second guy comes up, just like Caleb Williams was number one, and then Jaden Daniels was number two. Yeah, like I do love Stroud. It's just his offensive line's not going to be helped this year. I don't see Christian Kirk being too much of a difference maker, being traded for a 7th round NFL draft pick.
Well,
So-
and I don't know that his value represent like a trade value represents the player. That was, we knew he was going to get cut, so we'll just spend the minimum it takes to ensure we get him, and we don't have to make a free agency bid. That's more what it seemed like. Like,
Yeah, so
if
I
Kirk
want to
had
see. I want to see what they do in the draft. So if they do draft a wide receiver in the 1st round, like I mentioned earlier, Ibuka. If they
I do
draft
wonder-
Luther Burden,
that would be great, but trading away all these offensive linemen, I do wonder if they're going O-line in the 1st round. And they're kind of locking themselves. Like that almost seems the likelier scenario, but it could happen, Jamie.
if they do
They
go
clearly don't
offensive-
value the O-line, right?
yeah. So, but they do need work on the O line. So if they do focus on O line this year, it's going to be late in the 1st round, right? So we'll see who they take. If it is a difference maker, and I can see Stroud maybe in that 8 to 10. Like I have him at 10. I can see putting him at 8.
I guess my quick comment is like what you were saying earlier, Rahul, about Bobby Sloak being gone, because you mentioned compared to Burrow, it was just play volume, right? Like so Loic was calling too many runs, 1st and 2nd down runs. Stroud throw on 3rd and long, right? Like something with more pass volume would help Stroud certainly, because you're not always just having to throw on 3rd and long. You're throwing in on 1st down, and maybe that gives them some advantageous passing lanes.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot that but there's just a lot that from the 1st season with the success that Stroud had and Slowick had, it was a lot out of a lot of 12 personnel. You know, you run 2 tight ends and a fullback. You're getting max protect, again, these deep routes over the middle. That maybe you think that they over complicated things, that they now had Stephon Diggs and both Dell and Collins were better than the reputation preceded where they were the previous year. You thought maybe switching to 11 personnel, it just didn't fit. It just didn't jive with what they had. So I expected to improve, and I think Stroud is going to be, someone we're talking about as a top 12 fantasy quarterback for the next 5 to 10 years. So
Yeah.
I feel pretty comfortable.
I agree. So we all had Burrow in our top of the 2nd tier, right? I could see Stroud is a comparable player to Burrow if they put the right pieces around him.
Because it's not like we see Zach Taylor as this innovative offensive dude. It's just this like Burrow's almost doing it on his own with great players, to be fair. Chase and Higgins, he's got the weapons, and I mean he's good. Stroud has Nico Collins, who we're about to talk about.
And then
Actually, you guys are ready.
Yeah, Stroud's also 5 years younger than Burrow, so there's an opportunity for Stroud to reach that top 5.
Yeah,
just like
certainly
Burrow
is.
is now. Yeah.
All right, wide receiver, and actually our 2nd tiers at wide receivers almost line up. Jamie again wanted to complicate things by putting a 2nd tier in there. So
I thought we talked about. Oh, we talked about CeeDee Lamb earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. So So Jamie's got CeeDee Lamb in the 2nd tier. Rahul and I had him in top tier. The 3 players that we're all convinced as these next guys behind Lamb are Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I think all of us have them as like the next 3, and then Nico Collins, Brian Thomas following up. And Jamie, you really solidify that by kind of having a half tier in between this tier. So I'll let you explain, why you have Nacua, Neighbors, St. Brown a little bit separated from Collins and Thomas.
Well, yeah. I mean, Nacua and Neighbors and St. Brown, like they get those targets. Nico and Brian Thomas are more of those like the deep threat guys that are more touchdown dependent and the yardage. But if we're in a PPR league, I want Nacua. Nacua was he broke the record for receptions for rookies. The very next year, Malik Neighbors passed Nakua and got the rookie reception record, except that what was it? Brock Bowers ended up beating him. But if Neighbors didn't miss those 2 games, Neighbors would be the leader.
Well, if Neighbors had a better QB, I guess if Bowers had a better QB, he would have also been better.
That too. Like now that Neighbors could possibly have a better QB, what's to say that he can't get the reception record? St. Brown. I have to put St. Brown above Nico and Brian Thomas. They're, like I said, they're razor thin. Like it's within like a 4th round pick. So if you offered me Nico in a 4th for St. Brown, like that's razor thin. Like I might go with the Nico because they're so close.
I might still take Amon-Ra on that case, but yeah, to your point, Jamie, I think the one thing Nico hasn't done is, I mean, he's earned targets the last 2 years, but didn't do so his first 2 years in the league, whereas these other guys have all come out crazy large target shares right from the get-go. I mean, Amon-Ra, he's, where I have it here. So Amon-Ra's target share, 21% as a rookie. So he was already, I think Nico had 22.7% in 2023. Like that's the year he really broke out, right? Like Amon-Ra was almost doing that as a rookie. So I think we saw Neighbors crazy good target share last year, and Puka through 2 years has done the same. So it's the consistency. I think it's just Nico didn't do it those first couple seasons, but the last couple years it's been consistent. So I think that's why we all have him a little bit lower than those guys, but still in the same tier, because I think we expect him to continue to get this massive target share.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I can move these guys next week in a different order, but they're all going to be in the same tier.
I think it makes it that, like right now, like that, those are the first 8 receivers, and even a great landing spot from rookie, I don't think is going to mess that up. Like these are the top 8 receivers in Dynasty. And I mean, we've got I guess Jefferson and Lamb are technically the oldest from that 2020 class, but I think everyone else is younger than them, right? So all these 8 are young, productive receivers. They're in a 1 QB. These are probably the 8 most sought after assets. Maybe throw in a Bijan or a Gibbs, and Bowers, I suppose. But yeah, Rahul, any comments about any of these receivers in tier 2? You're muted. Stunned silence from Nico Collins.
Yeah. No, sorry, I was on mute.
Stunned silence that Marvin Harrison wasn't here, and it's Brian Thomas instead, right?
Marvin Harrison wasn't here, and really, I was thinking about this in the lead up. Even like the most interesting thing I could bring is Ladd McConkey deserved to be closer to here, and I don't think so. I think BTJ, Malik Neighbors just have a little bit more explosiveness, just can do a little more with the ball in their hands, just have they're the size, especially BTJ, size speed kind of freak, which I think Nico Collins and BTJ's, Jamie, you group them together, and both of them are like huge dudes who then run in the 4.3s. But yeah, I'd be super happy with any of these players on my team. They're absolutely elite, high ceilings, can command the volume. Now Malik Neighbors, we don't know the QB situation for sure going into next year, but he already kind of showed that he is QB proof with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, and even a Tommy DeVito game here and there. So I feel very good about. But
right now, Tommy DeVito is the QB1 in the Giants, so maybe we'll see more of those.
But you did bring up Ladd McConkey. I love Ladd McConkey, but I do put him on a tier below, along with like a Drake London, Ladd McConkey, Garrett Wilson, JSN type players.
Yep, those are basically all those same guys. Actually, the next guy I've ranked is AJ Brown, and that's where he's a 20.
He's in that same
2018, but he's older than these guys, right? So like to me, he really does like kick off the next team.
AJ Brown's about to turn 28, and even if AJ Brown has a season comparable to Puka to Nico, his dynasty values probably started that downward trajectory just because of that age.
So
you make him a good buy. But
you brought up the AJ Brown in that same tier. I also would put Marvin Harrison Jr. in that tier just because of his talent. So AJ Brown, Marvin Harrison, JSN, Garrett Wilson,
Lad.
McConkey, Drake London, all
I mean,
in the same
you
tier.
know, I throw Jordan Addison in this tier too. I think my tier
Ooh.
3 at receiver is going to be pretty large. I know,
Ooh,
again, I'm
that's-
generally ahead of consensus on Addison. I've always been, so that's just going to continue.
I
to be
kind
the
of
case.
I kind of like Zay Flowers above Addison.
Ooh, that's another good one too. Yeah. Pre-arrest, I think I would have had Worthy up there too, but we'll see. But yeah, I think time to end with our trade of the week, and very
Yes.
appropriate since there's a couple players that we talked about. So this is again from Taylor Michael. So then you sent this on the Fantasy Six Pack Discord. So if you want to have access and get your trades involved, that'll be a place I'll be posting and asking trade questions. Is in the Dynasty channel of Fantasy Six Pack. So be sure to sign up if you'd like to get your trades on the show. But yeah, the trade of the week this week. So we've got the scoring settings. Ooh, did you not send me the scoring settings?
It is a
I don't-
super flex, tight end premium, 12 team.
I don't know if it's the same league as this other question, but let's just go with a conventional stock. You know, start 10 PPR super flex league. There's no quarterback, so it doesn't even really matter if we go super flex or what. But yes, one side we've got Devon Achane and Roma Dunze. The other side, Nico Collins and Brian Robinson. So one side a little bit younger, but there's still a tier 2 player on each side. One is Achane, one is Nico Collins. Jamie, you seemed when we first posted, you had a clear kind of winner, whereas the Discord, it seemed like it was a little more equal.
This isn't even close to me.
All right.
I would either wait. What did I say? If you take out
Robinson and throw in a better second.
Yeah, if you take out Brian Robinson and maybe throw in Kenneth Walker or a Bucky Irving type value, I would definitely think it's closer. But if you also add the 112 to the Brian Robinson and Nico side, I would maybe lean the Nico Collins, Brian Robinson, and a 112. But Achane being a top 3 guy, Roma Dunze being a top 15 dynasty receiver, eventually, I'm going to go to Achane and Roma Dunze side by far because Brian Robinson just doesn't cut it for me.
Yeah, that's fair. He's like the weakest asset, right? And if you've got 3 strong assets, what doesn't belong, right?
Let's say I have Achane at number 3 running back and Nico's number 8 receiver. That's about even, right? But a Dunze top 15 receiver.
Not for me. I've always been lower than consensus on a Dunze.
Okay, well let's say Achane's 20 receiver, right?
To be fair, Jamie, a lot of people have him as a top 20 receiver. So
let's say Dunze is number 20. Robinson is what, 30, 35 at running back?
Probably in the top 30.
Top 30. Let's say put him at 30. Like you want
in mid-March, it's hard to say. Brian Robinson for sure going to be the RB1 for the Commanders?
No, he's not.
Mid-March, yeah.
No,
he's so far it seemed to survive free agency, but we still have the draft coming up. And like to me, running back 28 doesn't equal wide receiver 28. Like I'd much rather have
So
like to be fair, JB, I would rather have a Dunze than Robinson. I'll give you that.
Yeah, so like in Dynasty, kind of what I think is you take your wide receiver ranking and your running back ranking, and you want your running back ranking to double whatever receiver ranking it is. So if you have a top 15 receiver, you want a top 8 running back for that top 15.
And you just said receiver. It with Achane, right? Like Achane's RB4, Collins is wide receiver 8. That's essentially exactly
it's equal.
Yeah,
but a Dunze is above Brian Robinson by hands down. Even if you have a Dunze at 20 and Robinson at 30, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, give me Walker at 14 and a Dunze at 20. Maybe that equals the same.
It's like someone in this trade considered Odunze solely on his performance last year, and then also was under a rock, and not to insult anyone listening, but also missed that Ben Johnson went to the Bears, because I think in most leagues the Odunze, like the bounce he's going to get in year 2 is already well priced in, and maybe there's just a misunderstanding, or I don't want to say misunderstanding. Love Nico Collins, but I think saying Nico and Achane are equal is pretty fair, and so the second half of that trade just does not come very close.
Well, and no Keenan Allen, right? Like Odunze, he had some big target games last year, but it was inconsistent. Like, okay, he might get double-digit targets one game and then struggle to get 5 the next game.
Yeah.
Without Keenan Allen, I wonder if he's going to be a lot more consistent.
And DJ Moore's getting up there in age. He's almost 28, 29, so he's got two years left.
Does DJ Moore want to get traded to the Jets to join Justin Fields? No one wants to get traded to the Jets. I'm kidding there. But I'm looking at, I found Taylor's team. So that gives us some insight. It is a start 10. It is a super flex league. I don't know about the scoring though. That's the only thing. So I don't know if it's full PPR, half PPR, but looking at the current running backs, Taylor has Achane as the RB1, James Conner, Tyrone Tracy, Rashad White. Is that Kendra Miller on the
someone's trying to rob Taylor.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, for Taylor to go down to Brian Robinson as RB1 seems risky, right? So I think we're all in agreement to go with the Achane Odunze side. I know Taylor did give us a comment. Thanks, guys. Loving the show. Y'all keep it up. So I don't know if he's head out. It's been about a half hour since we've seen a comment from Taylor. He did say it's done, boom, and that's, I think, is reference to the other trade. We told him to go get Justin Herbert, so he went and traded for Justin Herbert.
Good job.
And so good to make that move, Taylor, but I think it's also good to hold the Achane Odunze side.
100%.
I think all three of us are in agreement there. So, yeah. Eventually, we're going to get to a trade where we disagree on, and it might make for interesting discussion arguments. I mean, we still could argue a little bit about Odunze's value here, and is he a top 20 guy, or is he closer to wide receiver 30? But regardless, the difference between him and Robinson would still exist high.
Yeah, we're going to fight on that one.
Maybe I am too low on Odunze.
Yeah, he's closer to our wide receiver 12 than he is to our wide receiver 20.
Maybe. I clearly disagree. Maybe again, I've kind of always been lower than consensus on Odunze. I didn't have him as the wide receiver 3 in the draft class.
He'd be the number 1 wide receiver this year's class, and people have Ted it.
Sure, but I think
15.
You can say that about 5 different receivers from last year.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I might have to reconsider Rome's value in dynasty rankings. To be fair, I hadn't done my post free agency update, which I think was going to focus a lot on the lower tiers. Maybe I do need to send my bias aside of Rome Odunze and go raise him a little bit. But
so we are closing out. I just want to bring up some breaking news. Mac Jones has agreed to a 2-year deal, $7 million on the 49ers.
They finally got it done.
That was the team that the coach, I forgot who the coach was, but they wanted. He wanted Mac Jones on that team in the draft.
GM drafted Trey Lance instead.
Yes. So now 49ers finally have Mac Jones.
Ooh, is this Purdy insurance, right? Like, okay, Purdy, you can't ask so much because we love Mac Jones. We're totally willing to go with him as the starter. So if you want to continue to start here, you've got to meet us in our price range and not be like the highest paid QB in NFL history.
Mac Jones has put up top 5 quarterback numbers at least twice in a year that he's played.
Twice in 2 games, yes, no, for sure.
Twice in a year,
but he's also maybe the lowest floor of any quarterback.
Yeah,
because if he's not throwing touchdowns, he's not running, and so you're going to get so little if he's not. And to be fair, if he's on the 49ers, that's an offense you will have yards after the catch and touchdowns with Kittle, and you're dumping off to McCaffrey a ton. The new superstar Juwan Jennings, so it's a good offense to be part of. But I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to get Purdy on an extension. It might be until August. The 49ers love to wait till just before the season to give these extensions. So why would they change their tune on that? Like, Purdy's good. We'll see a Purdy all off season. We'll be wondering about the Purdy extension. And then like 2 weeks before the season, it'll happen. And it'll be, oh yeah, we worried for nothing. Right. So that's what I'm kind of anticipating. And Mac Jones will be completely useless, but thanks, McCorkle Jones, for making a return. And thank you, Rahul and Jamie, for coming back and being willing to continue to be on a show with me. I love this. Absolutely. I love both of you. And I think we make some great stuff. I mean, we're going almost 2 hours here, and I think we could continue to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm sure we can go another 2 hours if we really wanted to, but I don't think the fans want to watch a 4-hour show.
Started.
Well, we got some big news upcoming. I know we were, I think, talking before we're going to do coaching changes, but there's so much to do free agency that I don't know if you guys. Like, I'm thinking we just skip coaching changes. Is that something maybe later in the offseason we do? And we just dive right into all the crazy NFL trades and free agency these next 2 episodes. So tune back in next Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern here on the Dynasty, or here in the Fantasy Six Pack network of podcasts. And live on YouTube and Facebook, again, Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. This is the Dynasty Six Pack. So be sure to follow the Fantasy Six Pack account at Fantasy Six Pack. That's all spelled out. I love numbers, but don't use the numbers even in episode 2. For the guys, we were going for 2 here now to the Fantasy Six Pack, although we still plan to contribute to going for 2. Jeff, don't worry, you haven't lost us. But you can follow us on Twitter. Rahul's at Small Talk FF. Jamie's at Jamie Perog. I'm at Senra Says. Any final words, guys?
Great show. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And we'll talk to you next week here on the Dynasty Six Pack. Thank you very much.